attorney here at Fakery, Drinker, Biddle, and Reith. Thank you all for coming. We love showing off our office space to folks. So hopefully you enjoy the views and have enjoyed your breakfast. I serve in the construction and real estate litigation group. Many of you know my colleague Sean Doherty, who is not able to be here today, but I also serve on the firm's alternative intelligence working group, or excuse me, artificial intelligence working group. I haven't had my coffee yet this morning, I apologize. So this talk is very interesting to me, and I'm very excited to listen to this panel talk about AI in construction, and I'll turn it over to RJ to introduce the panel. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you and welcome everyone. We're so excited to have all of you here this morning. We were last here a year ago doing a professional development panel, and this topic came up for our Future Leaders Committee. And our committee did some research, did some digging, reached out to people, and put together this wonderful panel. Our preparation calls for this event have been really interesting. So I think this is going to be a lively discussion. We're not showing slides and walking you through things. We're really going to talk about this topic thoroughly and from some different directions, as you'll hear in this conversation. And then we are fully prepared and loaded for plenty of Q&A afterward. So please do hold on to your questions, save them. This panel is excited to at least try to answer some of those questions. The CBC has a lot going on right now. We do a lot of events like this. Coming up on April 16th, the Commissioner for Chicago Planning and Development, Commissioner Boatwright, is doing a presentation at the Union League Club about a number of projects happening in Chicago. Put that on your calendar, April 16th. Get a seat soon if you're interested in hearing the Commissioner speak. And then, of course, in May, there is our Merit Awards, which is sort of our annual kind of the Oscars for construction in Chicagoland. It's always a great event. And this is going to be a great event as well. And so without further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce our panel to you. You probably reviewed their information on our event webpage, but just to be clear, we have Jamie Barr. He's a principal and VP at Langen Engineering and Environmental Services, which is a national multidiscipline engineering and environmental consulting firm. Welcome back to Chicago, Jamie. Although he started his career in Chicago, he's currently responsible for Langen's environmental practice in New England. Jamie is also the co-chair and founder of Langen's Artificial Intelligence Task Force. He has logged well over 1,000 hours of practical AI training and troubleshooting. And as a result, he has done a number of speaking engagements to do what he's doing today, sharing practical knowledge on the subject. Dana Erdman, to my left, holds a dual role as VP of Technology and Innovation and Diversity and Inclusion Officer and founder at Bully & Andrews, where her contributions are pivotal to project success there. With a comprehensive range of responsibilities, Dana ensures each project receives tailored technological support, empowering clients to make well-informed decisions and curating innovative thinking to solve for the unique individual complexities of each project. Dana's passion for innovation has garnered her recognition, including being named one of Autodesk's 40 Under 40 and earning a spot among Constructech's influential women in construction. Luther Lampkin, down at the end of the table, is the Director of Technology and Innovation at RG Construction in Elmhurst, whose skilled background in digital technology pairs him with clients enhancing their adoption of building information modeling, BMI, of course, virtual design construction, and design asset management. Luther is a change agent in a traditionally non-diverse profession. His current and past projects combined consist of $14 billion in revenue, including hospitals, wet infrastructure, industrial, educational, and federal projects. And then Dan Shaw is the CEO and co-founder of Bridgeline Technologies, which is a Chicago-based construction tech company harnessing AI to automate pre-construction workflows. With deep roots in the construction industry, Dan's career has been defined by his ability to align innovative technology with the needs of contractors, architects, and developers. And as the leader of Bridgeline Technologies, Dan leverages his construction industry background to drive innovation, creating AI-powered solutions that streamline pre-construction workflows and enhance operational efficiency. That is our panel. What we're going to do is begin with Dana, who's going to begin our topic, and then the conversation will range from there. We're prepared to go through the panel, and then, like I said, we will wind up with plenty of Q&A. Feel free, as the panel goes on, to get up and down and get refills as you need them. There's no need to be formal and be chained to your chair. Feel free to get up as you need to. Certainly, when this is over with, feel free to hang out for some networking. I believe we have the room until about 11 o'clock. So there's very good networking opportunities here as well. And with that being said, here is our panel. Thank you, Dana.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dana Erdman. I'm the VP of Tech Innovation at Blaine Andrews. Just a quick show of hands here. How many folks in the room have attended an AI panel or something adjacent to it in the past? Okay. So when we were going through our panel prep, we really wanted to lean into the idea that this was not going to be a typical panel, and maybe I'm the part of this that's not typical. I know that I've been in the same seats as you all. I've attended panels, I've attended discussions, and typically I'm presented with people like the three that I'm sharing this panel with that are subject matter experts in this field. I'm not. So I'm coming to you today with a very vulnerable position of where Blaine Andrews is in our AI journey. We're still very, very young in it. We're still learning about what it really means to be a part of this journey, what our data looks like, things like that. So that's my perspective. Maybe just to start, a quick recap of who Blaine Andrews is in the industry. We're Chicago-based. We're a general contractor. We've been around for 130 plus years, which means that we should have a whole lot of data to use to build AI algorithms off of, but it's a mess, as you can imagine. We work in a bunch of different spaces. We have a bunch of different market business units. Each of those business units sort of operates as its own individual business unit, which sounds really great in theory, but when you're trying to build an enterprise solution, it's really, really difficult and complicated. We also have a few different specialty contractors as part of our brand. We have a masonry and a concrete restoration company. That's just important to know because in terms of journey, I would say those companies are actually much further along in their journey than the core business is. And that may be the opposite of what we would traditionally think of for our specialty contractors. But they really got their act together years ago in creating a good data strategy. They have excellent data governance, the culture there, they understand why they're doing it. So we're really leaning into what they're doing and trying to bring that into more of the enterprise level. So that's a little bit of background on who we are and kind of where we are. So what does really AI look for us at the moment? And it's, again, we're just trying to understand kind of where we are. If this is really like a crawl, walk, run approach, we're really crawling at the moment, but we're getting started. So if you take away anything from this panel, it's that if you're very immature in your data journey, the point is just to get started somewhere. We're really focusing on trying to build a use case that's really around a high ROI, low effort use case, right? Because we want to make sure that we're making big impacts as fast as possible, because our culture is really maybe backwards than some other company cultures here. We almost have to present the ROI before we get company buy-in, and that's difficult to work with. You've got a bunch of skeptics in the C-suite who are considering that AI might just be another VR or AR trend. They're wondering what makes this any different than the other things that have been buzzwords in the industry. And this just feels different, right? In my opinion, anytime a technology or an innovation touches consumers first, it traditionally works out better in construction, right? Like the QR code was monumental for construction. It was just a way for us to share information back and forth when we couldn't actually physically be in the same space, but it forced companies to digitally transform in the way that they shared documentation, the way that they communicated to each other. And I think ChatGPT entering the consumer space like really has kicked this off in a way that feels much more like that. It feels sustainable, it feels like it's here to stay, but I think the pace at which it's moving is so fast that it's almost scary, and it puts people like me in a position to have to understand it at a bunch of different iterations. So I think where we are right now, I mean, we're just trying to get a hold of our data. As you can imagine, we've got data everywhere. We really try to force our data into a single source. So we're Procore customers, so we're really trying to make Procore, at least to the extent that it can be, our single source of truth. But as you can imagine, a company of our size and of our age, we've got data tied up in all kinds of spreadsheets, right? And there are tools and mechanisms out there now that really allow people that really love their spreadsheets to continue to work in them, but we really need to get that data off of them so that we can use it. And so there are tools out there that allow us to let them continue doing what they're doing, but we can grab the data. So we're investigating that. Like I mentioned before, like we're just trying to get feedback and buy-in from our users and our executives. So this is a little bit different than what I traditionally do, where I kind of keep it close to the chest until I know that there's a really good use case out there, and then I kind of push it. I grab people that are interested in learning a little bit more, and I want to get their thoughts and feelings on it. And then once we get something fully fleshed out, then it goes to the executives for their buy-in, because I have to have some sort of like feel good right before I go to the executives, because otherwise they're skeptical and they turn it away. And then lastly, I guess two things, right? We're piloting a bunch of stuff out there. I mean, there's a bunch of products out there that are worth our attention. So we're trying to get a sense of what the industry looks like, and ultimately trying to think of like what this looks like across the enterprise, right? Like being able to plan for scale, and that is maybe one of the hardest parts too, because that means that we're going to be forced at some point in time to not just like let our data be our data, let it sort of be what it is, where it may. It's not consistent, it's not clean, we're just trying to use it, right? You're going to top out at some point in your journey if you don't actually put better data governance in play. So I think I touched on some of this already, but what are we doing? We're spending too much time essentially in pilots and demos. We're almost like trying to spend too much time trying to get a sense of what's out there and not spending enough time working on our own data governance. What we've done pilots with companies. One particularly is out there. They do a great job with marketing. It was a failed pilot, and it ruined a lot of trust of how we view AI. The output was not good, the onboarding was not good, and our teams did not have a good experience with it. And I think the takeaway there was that if you are going to pilot different applications, finding the right team is essential. And they were a team of open-minded individuals who were basically forced to try this product out, right, on a job that just didn't need it. So the pilot was set up for failure to begin with. And then second, I think that the onboarding process from the application provider was just not great. When you have to be experts in prompt engineering, you're creating a barrier for acceptance in that pilot, right? Like we don't want to be experts in it. We just want your product to work. So that kind of went away. We did sort of regroup after that, but then we also we got connected with a company that's still in stealth, and we've been design partners for them for a while now. And that gives us an opportunity to learn with them, right? We're giving them our business cases, we're giving them our workflows, and we're saying, how can you help us with our current state? And that to us is an ideal relationship. Getting in early with a company that might be so early that they don't have a product yet. They're looking for people like us to help guide their product to market. So we've actually spent quite a bit of time in that space, helping partners that are still in stealth get to market, because we know when they get to market, there's a product there that we can actually use because we helped build that. So if that's a strategy that you all have not entertained in the past, and you've got the network to really make those connections earlier on, I would suggest that you all kind of go down that road. And then maybe just a last thought here, but where where it's challenging, where it's tough, this is not new at all. The trust factor and the fear factor is huge right now. So we are finding that as we work through our relationship with our partner in Stealth, we have to figure out how we can trust the output that they're giving us. And so there's obviously like a validation period, but what we're finding is that people that need to validate this information don't trust the tech, so they don't want to validate it. So you're in this loop of like, how do I know that this output is right when I've got people that are just resistant to the tech, but I need to validate it to find that it's useful. So that to me is like an impasse that we're at. There's obviously the fear factor, there's this, am I gonna lose my job? When ultimately what we wanna do is just put applications and technology in people's hands that just makes them more efficient at what they do. We're not looking to replace people, we just want them to be really good at what they do and not focus on the mundane tasks that can really be automated that are prime for the large language models or the AI algorithms, right? We just wanna make them better at what they do. Also, obviously, you know, tech fatigue is real. Like, we are tired of having to learn new tech. It's exciting to some extent, but then your culture just gets tired about being presented new solutions, especially when they don't have support, right? If you're just giving them stuff and you're not really supporting them through the process of learning something new, then that becomes very real for us. There's obviously the ethical question, right? Are we plagiarizing things? Is our tech biased and we don't know it? Do we have any original thoughts anymore? I find myself in ChatGPT all the time, and I'm like, I don't even know what my brain thinks anymore because I have something to think for me. And then for us, culture is a big, big piece of this, and culture is the key to adoption. And if your culture is resistant to it, you're not going to have successful adoption. So I am trying so hard now to find the right people that can support this and understand that whether or not you fully are bought into what AI could be, that they see the potential of how it can help them in their day-to-day. I think that's really important, and it helps with us getting that executive buy-in that I don't know that we have specifically right now. And then two other factors that we don't talk about enough. The cost of this is massive. I mean, if you go down the road of a data lake or a data warehouse, and you're really trying to put all of your data into one place, that's expensive, and all of these pilots are expensive, and all of these SaaS platforms are expensive, and so you really have to have strategy there for how you're going to budget this. And then obviously, I've talked about the data a lot, but we're trying to make our data work in the state that it's in, but we're going to hit a point where that just doesn't work anymore. And so, like, data governance is going to become a challenge for us at some point, but I'm hoping that before we get to that conversation of how that's going to be our stop block, that we've generated enough small wins that now people are really bought into the process. Now they understand what they could get if they have clean data and they have good data, and now that data governance policy is no longer a hot button. So that's kind of where we are in our journey. I think you'll hear from folks up here that are much further along and are using some really cool stuff for really good reasons. And
That was great. Thanks, Dana. So I figured I'm Dan Shaw with Bridgeline Technologies. I figured I'd kind of give you guys a bit of a story of how I got into the industry, how I got into AI technology within construction. We did over 200 interviews with general contractors and people building in the built world. So a lot of sentiments similar to Dana's that we hear going in and chatting with people, and kind of some pain points that we found. So I cut my teeth in the build world in the elevator industry, so selling new construction elevators, so anything from the ground up. So worked in Kansas City, Los Angeles, and Chicago, and it was very, very great opportunity, and I thought it would be much more financially rewarding, but I actually fell in love with the people in the construction industry the most, right? And really what we found with when large language models came to the market, right, was I was like, as a salesperson selling a very, very technical product, engineers, architects, general contractors would reach out to me with technical questions. And I found myself sending the questions to our engineering group. It would take about a week and a half to get an answer back, and in sales, time kills a lot of deals, right? So when large language models came to the market, I was that this is a solution to that problem, right? You can wrap a large language model around a very technical document, and you can instantly get an answer. So I found a developer to kind of put a little proof of concept together, say here's 15 technical documents. Let's put that into a large language model. Let's test if we can query some technical questions and get answers back. And it worked. So we started talking to people. We brought it to people throughout the country. We said, hey, do you want to see what we've built? And everyone, we had a lot of interest. So people would invite us into their offices, talk about what we're doing. Not a single person that we showed it to wanted to buy the product, right? But we did a lot of discovery, and what they were saying was, they were saying, well, can AI solve this? Can AI solve that? Can AI solve this or that? And really, it was, their problem was, I'm paying $150,000, $200,000 employee to move data pretty much from an unstructured format in a PDF to a structured format in an Excel sheet. We found that in every single organization that we went into, they were paying high-valued employees a lot of money to just move data from point A to point B. And we decided on the thesis that every time people communicate within the construction industry, they're passing what we call unstructured data along to each other, right? So that's unstructured PDFs, Word documents, drawings. There's not a standardized format that this is in the construction industry, as you guys know that. And so we were like, if you could sit between the stakeholders, you can automate these workflows. So we can kind of continue to do some discovery and figure out kind of what folks wanted. And we had some really great use cases kind of pop up especially through some general contractors in the Chicagoland area. Like Dana said, we kind of built in stealth with a few folks here in Chicago as they kind of gave us their use cases that we took a step back and said, yeah, this affects kind of the whole industry just in general. And like any startup, you need capital to fund it, right? So once we kind of did enough discovery, we brought our idea to the University of Chicago. They loved it, so they wrote our first check into our business. We quit our jobs and we started building an AI platform that specifically automates some data transfer movements within general contractors' firms. Really, really interesting. We've continued to have to kind of raise money to support a startup. That's kind of how it works. But we brought our product to the market in August and have had some nice success onboarding people. A lot of folks here, especially in the Chicagoland area, that we bring in and we say, hey, similar to folks like Billy and Andrews, they say, hey, we don't even know where to start our AI journey. And you really need to prove out kind of ROI almost instantly, and I actually don't think that you guys are unique in that they say, hey, what is the value of this? And we have some customers that say, I need at least 3x the value on the ROI of what you're doing. So if you're charging $15,000, I need to think of this as a $75,000 worth of value, right? Which is not uncommon. So we'll go into these organizations and we'll kind of try to prove that out, do a little bit of consulting, talk about what they're working on. So yeah, that's kind of our story, what we've done, and yeah, what we're building. So my advice is get started because everyone's kind of at the starting line. Most of the tech is going to be within startup organizations that you find. So there's some real risk there, and it is expensive, kind of to Dana's point. But without some trial and error, you're never gonna find what works for you and what actually provides the largest amount of ROI for your organization. So that's my 2 cents.
I would probably just jump on what Jamie said, or what I called you Jamie again. I know I did. What Dan said was too, like, I think that the pace at which this is moving is so fast. So by the time you figure out what your use case is, it might have passed you already at that point. So having a partner that you can really build with is important. And then also for us, like in the pilots that we've done with organizations where they're just information retrieval, it's not enough for us anymore. So even though we're still very early in our journey, we know that simple information retrieval is not going to be enough to really move the needle, because it becomes like, okay, that's great, now what? So we're really looking at building tech with partners that really help our folks do their day-to-day jobs much better. And I think to what Dan said, like having a partner like him would help us along in that, figuring out what that looks like, what that means, and how we can really build that to support our employees.
And to add one thing, if you guys do think about that, you should be asking for equity in return for these startups, right? From an organization standpoint, that your input and your value in getting their business to market is So valuable to these organizations that are trying to go to market. So don't be afraid to ask for that, especially because I don't know if I'm assuming you're not paying your pilots. You are, okay. And which is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Yeah.
But we can talk afterwards.
Yeah.
Right, noted. Excellent. Equity from that. Not for me, no. Thanks everybody for coming this morning. So I'm Jamie Barr, I'm a principal at Langen. As you heard, I run the environmental division of Langen in the Northeast, and my take today is going to be a little bit similar to Dan's angle, which is kind of how we got into this journey. I mean, we're a 50-plus office, 1,800 person firm, multidiscipline. Kind of like to say we do everything in the engineering space except for mechanical, structural, and architectural, but anything else in the kind of the built environment outside of that, and obviously construction. We're not in that. We're crossing over into the operational side of buildings with some digital solutions that we've been working on and whatnot. But so we interact with contractors, CMs, on a daily basis. And personally, that's my expertise are in brownfield redevelopment. So you hear environmental, and it's like, why is this guy up here at a construction event? But it's really about brownfield redevelopment. And the second thing, I give these presentations all over the country, and I've been doing it now since early 2023. And I always get asked, why are we listening to you? It was like the first thing I presented at Harvard, and which is just crazy in the first place, but they asked, why would we listen to you? And I was like, well, I asked GPT why anybody would listen to me, and then GPT asked me how many hours I spent, kind of entrenched in AI. So I'll talk to you a little bit about, well, over 1,000 hours, well into 1,500 hours now, researching this stuff, on top of my day job, which is running, a region. But our journey was almost a little bit accidental at Langen. I mean, we've always had a digital solutions practice that went out and looked for technologies that could help us. We weren't selling that technology. We were more using it for internal use, like what could make us more efficient, or what could we use for mapping. The GIS was a big thing, and it kind of morphed into digital solutions. But in 2022 December, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's a big tech investor in Silicon Valley. He said, "What do you know about GPT?" And I had just seen like the 60 Minutes, show, as many I think you've probably seen, and I said, "Oh yeah, the Terminator's coming. Like we're all doomed." And he kind of laughed at first, and he said, "No, I'm serious. He's like, I'm going to make a lot of money off of this, and this thing terrifies the hell out of me." So he said, "You need to really entrench yourself in it." And for about 2 months, I did nothing but follow his orders, and he gave me resources, he gave me access to certain things, and within 2 months, I'm literally running to my CEO and saying, "We've got to get on this immediately," thinking that once everybody saw the capabilities, that everybody would adopt like that. And what I learned, and what we learned at Langen about this, is that's not the case. So just by show of hands, who in here at your company has adopted like a large language model internally? Right, so there's a few. I mean, I've asked this question at every presentation, and there's usually anywhere between 1% and 5% raise their hands. So what I think that says is adoption is slow for this type of tech for now, or up until now. So if you think you're late, don't worry. I don't think you're late based on what I've been canvassing across the country. I think there are people who are moving fast, and I think one of the lessons that I feel like we learned, and I just thought of it last night, was there was a point in time where it was almost too early to jump in because the tech was so new, it was so revolutionary. The fact that everybody had access to it, and that was, for me, that was why I thought, geez, everybody's going to adopt this immediately, right? Everybody has access to it. You don't have to be a programmer. You just need to know how to speak a language or type, and you could find some real value in it. So I don't think anybody's late to the game. I think now is the time. I think 2025, you're gonna see a lot of real rapid adoption, a lot of products that actually are, have some level of confidence behind them, things like Dan's building, things you hear about Luther and what they're working with. I think that's coming, and so we've kind of developed our thought process on it. So back to our story, so I go running 2 months after I figure it out, so this is early 2023, and I'm told, well, go talk to the IT department, and let's get the, our CTO engaged. And this is not necessarily an IT problem. We've got a large department, but this requires some specific expertise that, very few people, and we've interviewed a lot of companies, very few people truly have it and truly understand how to implement it. You've heard from Dana and Dan about, data governance and how important the data is. Whatever you're creating in AI is fully reliant on your data and how well, the AI can speak with it, how well organized it is. That'll govern everything in the end. I think there's a period of time in the short term where your data doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because you're not looking for the perfect solution. You're looking for more of a shorter term solution. But so anyway, so I run in, and what we did first was we started a steering committee. Within about 6 months, we set up a steering committee. We talked about ethics and governance as engineers, certifying plans, stamping stuff, issuing reports with PE stamps on them. How's that all going to play out? So we put some rules around that. We put some rules around the fact that everybody has access to it, and we work, as I'm sure most of you do, with clients that have a lot of proprietary information. They don't want to get that out there. So our first thing was no AI internal, right? No, you cannot put anything that was Langen related in any LLM or anything like that. That forced us pretty quickly to, let's put one in-house. So we were able, and this is commercially available through Microsoft, and I think there's some other companies where you can take a large language model and have a chatbot in-house. Anybody have chatbots? Right? Same people who all raised their hands earlier, right? They're incredibly valuable, as a just a useful tool. So we started that first, and then we started aggregating ideas from all of our disciplines around. I said, if you had a button, like a red button that just did something for you that you really hate doing every day, give us a list of those buttons. And 500 items came back, and we weeded through all of them, and we figured out, okay, where's the lowest hanging fruit? What can we really focus on? Again, early on, the technology's changing every day. I'm getting 20 updates a day on technology changes. We tried to implement some things, so to Dana's point about failing along the way and making it somewhat public within your organization is a little bit, it drops the morale around the tech a little bit. But we tried to implement some things, but the tech would change immediately. We get our large language model in-house, and it's using GPT 3.5, which was okay, but hallucinated a lot. We didn't give prompt training, so anybody would go in and try it and go, this doesn't work. Right? So they don't know how to talk to it yet. And so getting the people on board is incredibly important. From the executive level to the technology level to the actual implementers, all of those people have to be fully aligned. That's kind of what we've figured out over the last 2.5 years. So we now have full-on steering committee. We meet, I would say, weekly now. We opened an innovation hub internal within Langen so that ideas could funnel. We put someone who was entrenched in our organization for years. They used to be a civil engineer. They are now head of innovation. That's all they do. To be honest with you, when I was going through and trying to figure all this stuff out and doing my day job, it would be I had a great idea. We'd start it, and then a month would go by, and I'd go, oh yeah, we got to get back to that. By then, it's the technology's old, and we're moving on. So I think having that culture and having those people in place is critically important. We also brought in outside help. We tried to do it internally. Like I said, we've got a large IT department, we have programmers, we have a couple AI experts, but this requires outside help if you're going to build something. And certainly it helps weed out issues with your data. Like what should you really focus on? Is it a short-term app that's gonna take you 8 months and it doesn't help restructure your data? You might wanna reconsider that. So by doing all of this stuff, it's kind of helped us flesh out where some pain points are and where we really need to focus in the next year, 2 years, to really make our data, our products and the future products that we want to put out, more easily to implement, I think. We're moving right now into, hiring the big tech guys to help us figure all of this stuff out, figure out products. Most of our products are focused on internal right now, internal efficiencies, and we can see we've created a number of things. We'll talk about them, I think, a little bit later, that have created 50, 60, 70% efficiencies on internal operations, like for specific project tasks. We're not selling that product to clients, but we're, internally it's really increased a lot of our efficiencies. And where we're going next is, who knows? I'm taking a course at MIT, and I'll leave you with this. So this professor's, his name's George Westerman, and he wrote a book, and he has a saying in it that's, technology moves like a rabbit, very, very fast, and industry is like a tortoise, kind of following behind it. It's very slow to adopt. I'm laying in bed last night, and I was like, geez, well, the tortoise wins the race, right? Like, at least the tortoise wins. So we will win, and the technology won't destroy us if George is correct. So that's where we're headed, but we're focused on it. We're getting engaged, and culture has become probably our number one thing right now, is getting all the pieces aligned so that people will move forward. That's it. Luther, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Luther Lampkin. I've been in the industry, I would say, about 20 years, and my journey actually started off thinking that I was actually going to be an architect. And I quickly learned from working very, very long hours that wasn't the necessary path that I wanted, but I was very, very interested in technology. And so it started to steer me down a path, I wouldn't necessarily AI, but just down a path of just finding my way. So I happened to be on different projects that happened to be very, very monumental. I worked on the Panama Canal for 6 years, and we took, before it was AI, we were taking advancements on from building information modeling all the way down to facility management. And at that time, in 2010, I thought that was groundbreaking. But once that project was over and I was overseas, I came back to the United States, and we hadn't governed anything that was actually transferring any data. So now we go into the world of really trying to figure out how we're going to implement BIM before AI had even, gotten to fruition. So I started being a consultant, going to different firms, and then I ended up consulting RG Construction, which is basically a drywall contractor that had no BIM, that had no anything. And I was looking for a way to stay home and not be a consultant as more. And so I partnered with Brian Garcia with RG Construction, and he was looking for a solution, crazy out-of-the-box solution of how can we use technology to put forth a drywall company to be a different brand. So I took my consulting skills and said, okay, well, if you let me turn this into a think hub, then I could figure out a way to help you and what your pain points are. And we actually kind of graduated from working in our no tech at all to taking a company had no technology to now being one of the probably advanced, not just drywall contractors, but a tech contractor, tech innovator in the construction field. Because not only are we utilizing AI, but we've actually turned into a business model. And I know when we start talking about practicality or practical AI, everyone talks about AI from a buzzword perspective. But how do we actually implement that and actually get paid to do it? That is one of the biggest things, because a lot of times when we talk about AI, that's all internal funding. It's all internal resources and everything else. So for me, what I did is I did research and development, went to research companies that were already doing AI, doing groundbreaking things, and I said, well, you know what? How can I turn that into a business model within our company that we can implement and now attract different jobs based on the innovation that we can bring to it? So a couple of ones that we did early on utilizing AI technology was reality capture. So we started being able to implement reality capture. It's super simple. We want to know what pain points we are. We couldn't go to jobs all the time, and we wanted something that could be able to analyze the information that we were looking at and start to reduce a lot of the different things. So we wanted to do, progress tracking. So now we're utilizing AI to tell us and say, okay, here's your percent complete in real time. So now we can go and do accurate percent for billables. Then the next thing we started doing implementation was Dusty Robotics. So now we're actually using AI robots right now as we speak on jobs all around the city that are actually laying out blueprints for all trades, for all of the job itself, which is making the job go so much faster. Don't have to worry about plans being out of date, because every time we go to a different floor, new plans, we've gotten that laid out for an AI robot. It looks crazy, it looks like a giant Roomba that's on the ground, but it's drawing out all of these plans and everything else. So we've our layout time for all trades have reduced 2 to 3 months ahead of time, and we're utilizing those AI functions to the point where now we're working at Cleveland Clinic, now we're working at Mayo, because now we're taking a different approach. We're not necessarily building AI in-house, but we went out to figure out who was already utilizing AI, how could we turn into a business model that we could implement and that no one was doing, because a lot of times when we start doing about technology, we still have to talk about ROI, who's gonna pay for it, right? And so for us, our technology budget for every project is 1%. So now everything's paid for upfront, that business model, and the other aspect of it, when you're doing this type of construction and you want to utilize AI is contracts. So in the construction field, the best thing that we've seen so far that works implementing AI technology is an integrated project delivery system, because that means that all of the players are all onboarded early. So now as a drywall contractor, we're all hired early in the SD phase. So now the solutions for prefab, modular, or any other things that we're talking about innovating all gets earlier in the project that we have those conversations, and everybody has the same risk reward pool. So because of those things, it pushes innovation to the forefront, which allows us to now put forth all these different innovations. So like for instance, for the projects that we're on, not only are we implementing the AI, we're also training people to use the technology. So we're training all the subcontractors, we're training even the GC, we're doing it for them, even though we're the subcontractor. So they're allowing us to utilize this innovation and technology on those projects to actually implement it in real time and actually start to see the ROI early. So what you just want to do is figure out what are my short-term goals for AI, what are my long-term goals for AI, and what are my mid-term goals for AI, because at the end of the day, somebody has to fund it. So now that we can say, hey, we're already implementing these short-term goals already, it starts to get people spending more and more and enthusiastic to go down the road of AI, and to me, that seems to be the best strategy so far.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think Dana mentioned it as well, coming up with what the business case is for these things is sometimes quite difficult, right? Because the tech is so new. For us, like I said, it was a time when it was really too early to try to adopt or try to build or try to do something like that. And the first thing our executive committee asked for, well, what are we going to get out of this? There were some simple calculations, and I said, well, if we create something that can, help us generate phase 1 site assessment reports for real estate transactions, right? 50% faster. Well, that's $5 to $10 million, right there. It wasn't that simple, right? And it wasn't until we started down the path of trying to figure out all the pieces that go into it and really engaging on not just, what we're hearing in the media or what we're, reading about, but actually bringing in some experts who've spent a lot of time in the field of machine learning, deep learning, whatnot, that they started to point out where those pain points could be. All can still be done. We can still create these things, but it took us quite a while to figure out, oh wait, this is it's a different animal than just your regular programming, your regular thought process. But from our innovation perspective, we are now it's almost technology has caught up. It's more, not caught up. It's more stable, I think, right? Stable. And now things, we're actually seeing ideas that can conceivably come to fruition, and some of them have. Some of the larger ones we're working on.
Now, what are you going to get out of this question is interesting, because I know what we can get out of it, but where I'm struggling, maybe you all have some insight in this, is, the construction culture is so based on relationships, right? So if you go through this elaborate strategy and you pull in your data, and your data says that you're spending $1 million chasing client A, and client A is giving you $20,000 worth of work, but you've spent $20,000 chasing client B, but they've given you $20 million worth of work, but client A has the better relationship. Your executives are looking and absorbing this information. What do you think they're going to do? Are they going to stop chasing work because it's not as fruitful, it's not as high of an ROI, the relationship maybe isn't panning out, it's one-sided? Or are we going to continue to bid work for that client, effectively using resources that could be spent elsewhere to bid other work with the other client? What are we going to do, right? So even when you get the data in a place that you can look at it and absorb it and make decisions off of it, are you going to, or are you going to let relationships sort of govern that thought process? And that is the part that I cannot sort of break in my head. And I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
I feel like the answer is easy in concept, right?
Sure.
But yeah, I think if it were us, there would be a lot of pushback on that relationship. That relationship important. Years back, it resulted in X,
Right.
and that's going to be. I mean, data doesn't lie, right? So, and I don't think we all look at it from whatever lens we're personally looking at things from. The data is agnostic to all of it. So there's some truthing that, I mean, we're going through those conversations, those truth conversations now, right?
I mean, I can give you a good example. We were chasing a project, and we're working with some of the same GCs all over and over again, and they exposed what we had did from previous project using AI and technology. They liked it so much that they put it in the RFP for the next project. Well, because it's so new, that kind of took everybody else out of the equation because they couldn't meet the RFP. So on one hand, it was a great business case to say this is why you need us to do it. But on the other hand, it also limited the pool of people who could actually go for that scope because they wanted somebody else. But because of the relationship, but they couldn't do it because of the fact that the technology we were offering, the relationship couldn't deliver. And so they ended up going with us based just upon that one. So it's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made just like that.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, Dana, that you can put information in front of people, but they're only going to do what they want, right? And what we found is the big ROI that we've been able to articulate, or what we've seen in the market with the current state of AI, especially using large language models, is time savings in mundane tasks specifically, allowing employees to do more with less, right? So to Dana's point, with AI, you can bid that old relationship, and then you can also go chase new work as well. And I think that's something that's really powerful that AI would kind of allow you to do as you take that information of like, maybe this is a bad client, and you can't just dump them right now because relationships are real. So it's kind of time doing more with less, getting more efficient, and reducing errors, and kind of getting a second set of eyes on kind of these workflows. So what we've seen is the immediate value add that's on the market today.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. So how many people in here have email fatigue? I would think you all raise your hands. I know you all have email fatigue, or you could, Does anybody in here use Copilot, Microsoft Copilot in your companies? Yeah, we've been beta testing it now for feels like forever. It's a pretty powerful tool. I get 300 plus emails a day. There's no way you can look at all of those, right? So you just really quickly weed through. I tell everybody, you want to get me, do not email me. You better be texting me. If it's important, do not put it in an email. But and I'm not here selling Microsoft, just, it's just a really powerful tool in Copilot. And these are things that are commercially available today. You can use them today. They're powered by, GPT. Every morning I get an output from my Copilot in my Outlook that gives me all of my emails that have essentially asked me to do something. It checks my inbox for that, and it checks my sent folder for what have I responded to, and it removes those to-dos and then just leaves me with a nice to-do list. I bring something like that up because that's like a real tangible thing that's today. It's reliable. It's not perfect. Nothing that we're talking about is perfect yet, but it is a huge value and a huge increase in efficiency. And there's other things. I mean, you guys use transcription software in your meetings? I mean, all of our construction meetings now, like we're using Microsoft Teams, even if it's just sitting here on my laptop and we're in a room and everybody's live, I will open it up and run it, and it will just transcribe it. Took some time for people to get used to that, like, oh God, you're recording every word, and it does that, but it doesn't output every word. You know, it does a really good job of summarizing that, so that's part of the Copilot suite, and I think some of that's even free now. But those things are super powerful, just like simple things that are accessible today that you can kind of get started with.
Yeah, and just keep in mind too, when you're utilizing AI, the same concept of garbage in, garbage out is still applied, right? The problem that we're having right now that still hasn't been addressed is the issue with building information modeling is that all of our workflows are segregated. All right, we know that from the design side, we know that from the construction side, and it's not an ebb and flow of taking that same model data and being translucent all the way down the pipeline. So if you're talking about implementing AI, from your short wins, it would be something that's targeted as a pain point within your company. And then overall, I think AI, when it gets more mature, is how can we apply that to start to really take all out of this data that we're doing, and even just how we're modeling. For instance, when we're doing prefab and modular, we have an AI program that will go through an architecture model early, and we'll do basically a feasibility study of saying, hey, how many repetitions do we have? Can we turn this into, you know, a modular blade wall or, you know, some type of room that we can modularize, right? Well, a lot of times because the way it's modeled from a design standpoint, it's not modeled from a constructability standpoint. So now the software has to now compartmentalize that to go ahead and figure out what the modular aspects are. And so that's what I was saying with AI, it's only gonna be as good as the tools that you're inputting the data to it.
Yeah, I think jumping right in to try and build something on all of your data was one of our bigger mistakes, was, you know, versus looking for those solutions that exist today that we could just really quickly, easily implement. All of this goes back to the ROI discussion. Quick wins, quick fails.
Yeah.
So fail quick, learn from those failures, and then get some quick wins under the books before you jump into kind of the larger things. Even the small stuff though can be quite expensive. I mean, when we looked at implementing Copilot when it initially came out, I mean, it was $400,000 or something like that. You know, I mean, it was significant. And so we just said, well, give us a pilot, and the price, you know, came down as everything kind of has done over the last year and a half. So I look for those quick wins. Just real quick, one of the things that I think anybody can do now, and what I've been kind of preaching to our employees and our staff, if you have access to large language models, what we found out by canvassing our people was people were always looking for like that use case, that one use case for it. Like, oh, I don't have a proposal for it to review, or I don't have this or that. And I said, well, what do you do when you have a question about anything? And everyone's just, I Google it. I said, well, wipe that from your memory now. You're not Googling anything anymore. You're using Gemini, right? Google Gemini, which is free now. They just released their new model yesterday, 2.5. It's incredibly powerful. I use it as a sounding board, and I've been doing this for years, and just like talking to it, like as if I were to go into, you know, an expert that I needed to talk to. You know, so here's my issue, here's my problem. I lay it all out. You know, if it's a public model, I'll kind of anonymize it, but lay that all out, and then I'll ask it. I encourage all of you to do this. When you give it a prompt, ask it to ask you 5 questions that will make its output better, and it will come back with the most insanely appropriate questions that you just would never have thought that it could, you know, would think to do something like that. But that really makes your output better. It allows you to talk through complicated issues. Even if you know, an Excel sheet, you know, how to put a formula in, specific formula, you wanted to do something, ask the large language model to give you a step-by-step for how to do this. It'll really be, you know, beneficial rather than, you know, you or your people kind of spinning their wheels for hours. Those are just easy things versus, yeah, get all your data together and train a model on your data. Sure.
Should we think about moving to some Q&A? I think there are some questions loaded here in the audience. Maybe I can start off with a question. And before I do that, I'd like to thank the folks from Chicagoland AGC, who are our social media sponsor. Stacy and Kaylin are here. And thank you very much for your sponsorship. This is a really interesting topic. I have a question about safety, because with the CDC and our merit awards, we focus quite a bit on construction safety, and I wonder if there are cases and practical uses that help to make the construction site safer, and if that's something that we can look forward to in the future. And once they answer that question, if somebody has a question, you can raise your hand. I'll run to you with the microphone and just give your name and your firm name and fire away with your question. But anyone want to weigh in on safety?
I'm an engineer, so you guys,
I
construction.
mean, the answer is yes. Computer vision's been around for forever. I think there were early applications built years ago around analyzing images from cameras, right, to determine whether or not it's a PPE violation or they're doing something unsafe. So that has been around for a while. We're not using it mostly because it seems like a more of a, at least the products that we've looked at in the past are more reactive instead of proactive. It takes a minute to analyze the image, at least it did, and then for our safety and risk department to get it, then they would get it, and then maybe the violation's already occurred in the past, right? So you have to deal with it at the time of occurrence. So I'm sure that tech has improved, but it's definitely out there. I mean, and anything that relies on computer vision has probably only improved over the last, 5 to 10 years.
Great. I have a question back here in the back of the room.
Sorry, I'm the lawyer, so I'm risk averse. The question I have for you is, how are you mitigating the professional responsibility, the standard of care issue when you're dealing with AI, especially in the design space where you've got AI robots going around and drawing plans and helping handle that automation task? What are you doing to address the standard of care issues to make sure that those are meeting the applicable legal standards of care?
So a couple things that we're doing. One, when the trades give us their files and everything else, they have to go through at least 2 steps to mitigate that and say this is approved for the field. And then we'll take all the files, we'll combine them together, have another review before we go ahead and put that into the robot. And then also we had to work with the GC to validate and say, hey, what we're doing isn't going to mitigate the fact that we're still going to use our digital documentation standards that we all have adhered to. And so all those things we had to go through before we get final buy-in and sign-off. Once that happened, then it was okay.
So for us on the kind of professional engineering side, nothing that we're creating or we're using is a one and done. Hit the button and go. Our goal is really like, could we be 30% more efficient? Could we be 50% more efficient? Could it create a draft? Could it get us, through a writing block hump to get to the crux of the report? Can it help us kind of sort through an idea? There's always the human interface, and sneak peek into the little thing that we're working on right now is this report generator that actually allows us to validate in real time. So as it generates, it provides the output for the user to look and check. Yes, that's correct. No, that's not correct. Enter what isn't correct about what the AI has developed, and then it will log that and train the model to not do that again. It's just mind-blowing to me that exists today. I saw it in real time last week. It was unbelievable. So there's always somebody engaged. We don't have any thought today to have a one and done button that's, or a final review. Here's your final review AI. I think that the reality is that at some point it will become better than us. It will see better than us. Already, I know in radiology, I have some friends in that space in Silicon Valley who, their efficacy in using computer vision to read radiology images is, topping 80-90% efficacy. So, it's getting very good.
Another question. I know you have questions. We all have questions. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Jen Seward with Pepper Construction. I had a question for those of you that are doing, I guess maybe not Dan because you're a tech company. How much is your IT? You guys talked about this in the one of the challenges we have, right? Like how much does IT take the lead on things versus call it the business and the operations? From your perspective, what is the reality of where you've seen success? Like what should be kind of their roles and responsibility and how much time they're putting in versus maybe the other aspects?
I mean, we're maybe different, I said a few times. Our IT department is one, and I am half. So we work with MSPs, and we also have an MSSP, right, that handles our cybersecurity as well. So for us, like IT they're just there as a function to do the thing we need them to do. They're not doing any of the planning portion that really runs through me. So we're probably not the best use case for this. We don't want IT to be a stopgap for us. They're there just to implement, and that's it. But if there's security questions, that goes through our MSSP. We do vendor assessments to make sure that any vendor that we're working with is compliant from a security standpoint, but the actual work and the planning gets done mostly by my department.
For us, I mean, our IT department is fairly large. Joe would say 300, 200, 300. And it's compartmentalized. There's networking, there's programming, there's the IT of conference room stuff and computer stuff. Where we started was it went from me directly to IT, to an IT department that was not prepared for it and not staffed up for it. We didn't have the expertise in house to try and move that forward. And my guess is there was probably a lot of fear too. This is going to squash us. And that certainly wasn't our intent, and is not our intent today. It's only to make them more efficient. What we've found is that there needs to be a very tight alliance between operations. So initially I thought just operations and IT, right? The people doing the task, the people who can help create the thing to get it done. Executives have to be there and have to be on board and pushing that same message, because you're not going to get the funding to do any of it if they're not on board or they're misinformed. And I think a lot of times it's not that they're not on board, it's they're misinformed, they're focused on something else. My biggest failure, I think, in doing all this was not demanding that I sit with our executive committee and our board of directors and show them in real time the capabilities of it. I think we probably would have moved a little bit faster. Might not have helped because, like I said, the tech changes so fast. But for us, I think everybody's going to be on board.
We have a question here in the corner.
Two questions, actually. The first, I'll show my ignorance. You've used the phrase large language model several times. What is that? And how does that work? And the second question is, as a self-performing contractor, our single biggest expense is field labor. So how can AI be used, whether it's today or where do you expect it's going in the future, to be able to improve labor efficiency and labor productivity?
I'll step in on the large language model question. So a large language model, so think about ChatGPT, that's what a large language model is. And one thing you need to understand about it is it's just predicting the next word, right? So it's not actually thinking, that it's not actually intelligent. It's been reading a bunch of documents on the internet, and it says, given this context, this is the most likely word to come next. So when you ask a question to a large language model and you get an answer that seems very correct but is wrong, that's called a hallucination. That's just because of the probability for that word to come next was the next one up. So if you haven't interacted with a large language model yet, ChatGPT is that technology. For field AI, I can't answer that question. I'll let that.
So I could answer that one. Like I said before, we were talking about prefab and modular. And so for us, on our design side, we were figuring out what could we do to modularize and do prefab. After that, what we did is we got a shop in Cleveland, and we started prefabbing large units with all the MEPs or blade walls, which are basically compartmentalized walls with an MEP already built in it. And so that way we took about maybe 45% of the labor off the site and into a warehouse. And so that's just one example of us being able to utilize AI in the early stages to now create a prefab modular opportunity that we could take that labor off site, so that way we could create a safer work environment, but also our productivity went up a lot higher with that aspect of having all those things pre-built and just bring them out to the site.
I just comment real quick on the large language model piece. So yes, it's predicting, and so you give it an input, they call that a prompt, and you get an output. Your output is only good as your input. And they call it prompt engineering. I think it's a buzzword, and we're not supposed to talk about buzzwords today, but it's real. Every language model has a little bit nuanced prompting. I encourage you to go on YouTube and research best practices for prompting in AI. It'll significantly increase the outputs that you get from large language models. With respect to the field stuff, having field crews go out, so I run an environmental department, we're in the field all the time on construction sites, on environmental sites. We're starting to use it for scheduling people and kind of figuring out the optimum, like if I've got to send somebody to 5 different states and to inspect a bunch of different sites, the AI, even just a large language model, will help me figure out what is the most efficient way for them to use their time. Where should they go first, when, how long, and you kind of plug all that information into the model, and it will spit out a schedule. We're using it now for diligence and site inspection.
Hi guys, my name is Sam Kimberly. I'm a general contractor in Chicago. Previously with a very large GC, now with a smaller GC. This is going to be a bit of a long question, so bear with me. I've got a point. For a long time, 10, 15 years ago, you'd be at a company and they're piloting a number of things like data reference, or over time you just eventually we found ourselves using an Oracle application for this and an Autodesk application for this, and our teams are running out of Procore, and the big pain, that was a big pain point. We had kind of rollout fatigue, right? You've got multiple different applications, and we're having our people, there's a reason for this, and then at some point you realize you want to consolidate that data and trying to get everything back to a point. And in our industry, Procore's a big name, and they've got a big market share. And for a while, their selling point has been that they offered that, right? You can house a lot of these different applications, a lot of these different functions, get them into one database, and that's great. And it seemed to be great for about 5 minutes, right? And now it seems like it's peaked, and now it's either backsliding or going down the other end, where now it's turning into Procore is great for housing all this data, but everything Procore does now, there is some niche group startup that's going to do each of these various components better, and you got to get on board, or you're going to be behind the times. So that's my big question: is what's the 5-year outlook for this normalizing to the point where I don't have to tell my teams where, yeah, you have your Procore login, but now we're already finding that it's going to be necessary to say, yeah, we've got 5 or 6 different applications now that are all integrated with Procore, but they're still their own separate web-based application that you have to log into each of these things and use them separately. And as GC, rolling these out to subs where it is, it's a procurement interface where we've been using one thing and now we're talking about highlighting something else. That's my question. I think you get where I'm going. Yeah, I'd just like to hear your guys' thoughts on how you respond to GCs when they bring up similar things to you in your experience, and where you see this headed.
Unfortunately, with all the different competitors jockeying for space, there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, right? That's the first thing that you're asking. what I would tend to do is figure out what applications best suit me that I can consolidate, right? To make sure that I'm not jumping into so many applications. Like one thing probably bothers me about Procore, I keep having to change passwords all the time. I know I used to forget all the passwords, but having to figure out, because the GC uses Procore, but having to figure out what is the backbone to the things that you need internally, and does that all fit within that application? For us, that hasn't been the case. For us, we've been in HCC, but then our GC will still be in Procore, and some other things we probably build proprietary for ourselves to have some type of integration so we can consolidate. But right now, it's not one size fits all. So it is going to be constantly different things out there. You just want to be able to look and constantly do R&D to figure out, are the solutions going to be happening in the platform that you primarily use? Or is there something else that you consolidate so you don't get to a certain number where you guys get fatigued with all these applications?
I would think though, for the future, like you're asking 5 years out, you have a new business idea right now, an integrator, right? It's integrator for all of this stuff. There will be platforms that will just be integration of, I mean, they already have them for coding, where you can use all the different language models to actually create your coding on one platform. That's a great, idea for integrating any external modules for Procore or any other program that we're using.
Yeah, and one thing I'd want to add there is, in order to avoid tech stack overload for your folks, just pick one or two that you really have some high ROI on. There's going to be consolidation within the industry in the next 5 years. So a lot of companies that are being built right now will be Procore or Autodesk companies in the next 5 years. So find a couple that provide a ton of ROI for you, or some ROI, but definitely don't turn your folks off internally from tech, because that could be a big risk.
And one example I would give you is reality capture software that we use. It's called OpenSpace, right? Well, one of the biggest things I look for when I'm trying to look for an AI application is, what does that integration looks like? So that integration for that reality capture does Procore, Revisco, ACC, so it has a bunch of backends that it integrates to. So I can buy a solution that integrates AI, but it integrates into all these different platforms. So that's also another way too when you start to evaluate.
We have a question in the center.
Emma King from CCS. When you're talking about LLMs and you are wanting to take your data and start modeling it, you mentioned previously you can have your own private version. How do you convince people that what they're entering into that system isn't going out to build, sort of like taking your proprietary processes and pushing them out to the public sector because it's ChatGPT sort of powered?
For us, it's housed entirely on our server. There's no connection to the outside. I think it has capabilities now to communicate with the outside, not push stuff to the outside, but it can bring things in. Ours doesn't have that. We keep everything completely separate. So anything that goes into our Langen chat, we call it, is fully housed on our servers. If you're putting anything else in a large language model, even, I have an enterprise license for ChatGPT. It has a note that says that it will not use any of that information. It's all proprietary. It will not train on it, but I do not trust that. So nothing goes into that enterprise model.
Joe Good with Langen. Maybe carrying on from the standard of care question, we have a bunch of design professionals, legal professionals, insurance professionals, where it has to be right. I guess you guys have seen a lot of the industry, and I'm asking, has that shifted with reliance on AI, where we can give you product X using AI for a fraction, a tenth, a hundredth of the cost, and can get it done really quickly, but it's going to be somewhere between 80 and 90% efficient, versus we can be 10x or 100x and put a bunch of professionals on it, and you're going to pay that huge premium for it, and it's going to take a lot longer. Have you seen the industry change or adapt to being okay with 80 to 90%, or are you still seeing the need to every time have 100% certainty?
We literally just had this conversation with the partner that we're working with at Stealth, and they presented to us a bunch of different ROI or business cases that they were looking to get feedback on which ones they should work on, and they presented that exact same situation. This is easy, but we feel like, you know, we're going to give you better accuracy, or this is really complicated, but we're not really sure about the accuracy. Like, we need it to be right. Like, at least at Blade Andrews, we need it to be right. We need to trust it, because if we don't trust it, that tends to trickle down into, now we can't trust anything. And now I don't want to use it. And I don't want people to have to figure out if that answer is right, too. That's the other problem we had with the pilot that didn't work for us, is that we had to then go validate whether or not that output was correct. So for us, I mean, I'd rather you spend the time and we spend the money on it being right, Loctite. We don't have to worry about it hallucinating. We don't have to worry about it being 75% right in this case, but 90% right here. We want it to be right.
100%.
100%. Well, nothing's ever going to be 100%, but as close to 100% as you get.
Yeah, we find that we get that question a lot. So just for an example, one of the tools that we have in our platform is a bid leveling automation tool, right? So what bid leveling is when you're building a new building, there's 14, 15, 20 different trade partners, and then there's going to be 5 or 6 different trade partners jockeying for the contract on that job, right? And these general contractors are paying folks to sit down and open up these proposals and then move the data from the proposal to the spreadsheet to figure out where everyone's apples and apples and where everyone's apples and oranges. One thing we don't do is make a recommendation on who to buy, because that is still very much the human's job. There's a science and then an art, right? The science is the data movement, and that can be wrong. It needs to be right? But humans are fairly inaccurate at doing that as well. But the art is the pre-construction professional picking up the phone, calling the subcontractor, saying, "Hey, I thought you missed this. I see you missed this, or missed that." Getting to that point, that 80%, kind of like you talked about a little bit earlier, that rough draft, that's really where people are seeing some value add. Definitely not in making final decisions or final stamp of approvals. It's not there, and I don't see it getting there anytime soon.
Yeah, maybe it depends on the application and the use case and where we find the medium is acceptable. I don't know if I could say as a whole the industry is okay with getting close enough. I think that in some applications or in some use cases, maybe that is better. But for us, if we're working with a partner and we're presenting all these different use cases and we're just getting started, we need high value, high accuracy first to trust the product before we go down the road of being okay with some of these other solutions.
So one place where we're using it and we want it to be as accurate as possible, and we have to prompt it, enter that input to make it force it to be accurate and give us, like, verbatim is a word that ChatGPT told me to use, because it will then report back exactly what is in a document. So if we give it an RFP or something's issued, and I want to see how well it jives with us, and can it give can it kind of evaluate it based on everything it knows about Langham, we'll put that in. I'll use the word verbatim, and it will spit back all of the the critical items that we need to know for that RFP, so that we're making go-no-go decisions a lot faster now because of that. We didn't have certain prompt language in there, and it was hallucinating a little bit, giving us kind of putting us off a little bit. And once we realized, okay, no, we need it to give us exactly what all those requirements. It took us a while to figure that out, but that would be one instance where we needed to be precise, or else we're just wasting much time. No harm, no foul, really. Right? We're not putting the product out based on an RFP that we're responding to.
Sorry, I hate to monopolize the panel, but I do have a second question. We're talking a lot about front-end use of AI in the beginning of projects or managing data. How are you handling, I'm sure everybody here has dealt with post-project claims. How are you integrating AI into the claims management process, and from somebody who litigates claim disputes? How are you feeding that information to your inside counsel, your risk management team? How is that being integrated into the claims process?
For us, it isn't yet. I will tell you this though, I was just recently hired by a law firm to be their prompt engineer for a litigation in an environmental engineering matter. They want to figure out if there's unique arguments, and so they brought us in to be their, you know, their assistant. We're not providing the arguments. We're sitting with them, with counsel, and helping them work through a large corpus of data that's all housed on a private server, and we essentially chat with it.
For us, we had some legal disputes about work that was being done, and we had some things that kind of say collapsed or something that just, you know, and they were looking to figure out when the legal proceedings about, you know, cost and value, who ownership or what. We were able to go back through our reality capture and document and provide documentation and imagery for the time and dates of the things that had happened and what led up to it from a legal standpoint to be able to help us in that case that we didn't end up finding fault with us, because we already had the kind of the visual imagery and the documentation that we had by us capturing the project week to week.
Our long-term plan is to do that, is to, you know, eventually when the data, when we spend that time to really consolidate and aggregate our data properly, we would want to be doing that kind of debrief with AI to see if there's any insights.
Any other questions? Raise your hand if so. Anyone? Anyone at all? Well, again, I would like to thank Chicagoland AGC for their sponsorship, and I'd like to thank each one of our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.